So hello and welcome to another Flower of Light Mystery School podcast. And today I'm joined with Christine.
Hello.
Charlotte.
Hello again.
And of course we have another guest with us today. I mentioned this in the last podcast. And his name is Kiri, and he's known as the Bard of Tara. Hi, Kiri.
Hi.
And thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, very special. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for being here today.
It's great to have Kiri here today. So one of the things that we'd like for Kiri to do, he's written a lot of poems, and we might as well say right off the bat, Kiri's site is bardoftara.wordpress.com.
Yeah.
If you'd like to go on and read some of his poems or to get in contact with him, of course, as well. He may have other contact information he can give himself, but I think Kiri has agreed to start out with reading one of his poems, which is about when there was... Kiri, I'll let you say when there was a protest at Tara, is that right?
Well, when they put a road right
yeah.
through the Gowra Valley in Tara, they had a lot of other options. There was an old railway line that went the far side of Tara completely. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't use that, and we think there was vested interest where people bought up land, and when it was owned for the motorway, it became more valuable. We're not sure of this, but it's pretty obvious. So on Tara, we had protests. We started off a protest with a vigil fire, and the first I knew was JP Fay came down to my house, and he asked me would I have some contributions for the protest in Tara, and then he invited me up and I got involved.
Yeah.
And then
when was, just for people who don't know, when was
in 2007.
2007.
And I'd never written poetry, but sitting around the fire, everybody told stories and sang songs, and I started writing poetry, and eventually JP got me to read out a few poems, and I wrote more and more poems. One of my first poems is about a girl called Debbie Riley started the protest. She lit a fire in Tara and called it the Vigil Fire, and the fire lit for years and years, and everyone came to the fire, and we brought ashes from all over different fires.
And this would have been 2007?
In 2007.
Yeah.
And one of the first poems I wrote was on the 23rd of January 2007, and I called it Rebels.
And this is the one you're going to read?
I'll read this first one.
Thanks,
They'll brave the snow on Tara Hill, and be there when it thaws, at their smoky vigil fire, great rebels with a cause. Tara, famous for its ancient kings, its shamrock and its harp, its warriors, great fighting men, with spears and swords so sharp. Its banquet hall and hostage mound, ancient forts and rings, they protest at a motorway through this Valley of the Kings. At meetings they give their view, as each one stands and speaks. They're now on Tara's famous hill for more than 30 weeks. Tara lights some incense, our chef tonight is Dan, Senan plays the bowron as food cooks upon the pan. So help us stop this motorway with its bright lights and its din, and its 50-acre interchange, which is a mortal sin. That was one of my first poems.
Beautiful.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. And, well, unfortunately, the motorway did go through.
Unfortunately, we couldn't stop the motorway.
Yeah.
No.
But we put up a great stand, and we highlighted
You did, yeah.
what was going on, and everybody knows now. And later on, when they were putting a motorway right through Nout, we protested again, and we put in objections and made them change the bridge. They relocated the bridge now to a much better place beside the old bridge.
Well, there you go.
In Slane.
So
Protesting does work, and
does.
they knew that we were there to protest if they didn't change it.
Well, that's fantastic. But
So protesting is very important.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
To stand up for your rights.
Yeah, absolutely.
But actually,
yeah.
one thing that shocked me when I learned about it, because I didn't know about it at the time, was that the highway was diverted over the largest open air henge in all of Europe.
That's right. They discovered a wood henge, and it was, first of all, when they did the survey first, they seemingly didn't find it, or maybe didn't find it on purpose. But then we had a really good archaeologist who found one of the post holes, and then he went to...
What was that?
Aidan, I don't know what his second name was.
Okay,
The
that's
first name
no
was
problem. Yeah.
And he went from one to the other, and he found the whole henge. So they declared it a national monument, and then they destroyed it. And they're keeping it.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah. So it was one of the... and there was no need. They could have went around it.
Oh, yeah.
We protested, and we stood there, and they had so many security. They had hundreds of, mostly Pakistani, nice people, but they were all over the place, and they wouldn't let us. We went on. We stopped machines. We had a peaceful protest in Tara, giving out leaflets, and then we had a full-on protest at Ratloo, standing, stopping machines, and highlighting all that was going on. So it was full-on, and this protest, the motorway, Fianna Fáil were in government, and they were very powerful at the time, and it looked like they'd ruled for years. And the old curse of Tara was anybody that does anything against Tara, any king that does anything against Tara, loses its power. And in the next election, Fianna Fáil lost their power, and they've faded away since.
Well,
And we
that's
some people call this the curse of Tara, but maybe they were just no good anyway, you know. So
well,
Could have been two of the same
let's-
thing.
let's
yeah,
not-
after
let's not
what
get-
it did to Tara. Well, anyway,
we won't get political.
no.
But
That's a fact that's there.
Well, it's a very interesting story, and I suppose for me in a way, I'm interested, and I know you just showed us there the book of Taya Tefi that you have,
Yeah,
which and in your poem that you read there as well, you mentioned Tara as the Valley of the Kings,
Yeah, in your book, yeah.
which is interesting, you know, because that's something that's been pointed out before. You know, Tara is known as the Boyne Valley, really, I suppose, the entirety would be known as the Valley of the Kings.
well,
And it's interesting with the Valley of the Kings in
Yeah.
Egypt, you know. So
Very much so.
yeah, that's
and the connection with Tara and Tia Tepe.
and Taya Tefi, exactly.
So
yeah.
it's-
Tamar Tefi, yeah,
Yeah, it's all connected.
yeah.
Really
And
is.
and Taya Tepe is also connected to between Navan and Kells, right? The fields of Talton.
That's right. Yeah.
Her mound is there and everything.
That's right. And what, you know, they say that there's the story that Taya Tefi brought in with wasn't it Jeremiah? She came
Jeremiah
in
was buried in
Loughcrew.
Loughcrew
in
in
Carntine.
Carntine.
Well, they say that's
So they
where
say,
he's.
yeah.
And there's a stone in the mound in Loughcrew there that, in symbol form, tells the story of the arrival of Taya Tefi and the biblical. I mean, in the Bible, he's known as Jeremiah. I think in Ireland it would have been Olam Fodla. That'd be right, or
Yeah.
Olam Fola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Like the arch druid,
The
high
archdruid.
druid,
Okay,
or the
just for anyone that doesn't.
So that's an interesting connection, and what Taya Tefi was supposed to have brought with her. Do you have any information on that? You know, they say she brought the Ark of the Covenant.
They reckon the Ark of the Covenant was buried in Tara, and
That's right.
the British Israelites dug in.
70s, I think it was. Yeah.
It was in over 100 years ago. The British Israelites dug, and they dug up all.
Did they dig recently as well, though, in the 70s?
But not in Tara.
Oh, did they not? No.
No, this
I
was.
thought there was a more recent excavation.
No, that wasn't. That was just the Mount of the Hostages. They dug up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was nothing to do with the British Israelites, but they have dug up. They dig up the Rat of the Synods, which was looking for this Ark of the Covenant, and they wanted to get it for a present for the crowning of King George, I think. And
So it was
they did a lot
British
of damage.
Israelites, right? So it
British
was,
British Israelites. I'm not obviously sure exactly what they're connected to.
As you say, that was 100 years ago.
It was 100 years
Yeah.
ago, and they destroyed they were just looking for the Ark of the Covenant, and they didn't, you know, they didn't have much respect for what they dug up for, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So they destroyed the
archaeology in
Archaeology,
general is
yeah.
a destructive thing. You
Yeah.
know, they kind of have to
and
dig
was that,
things up, and it
was
often.
that when Yeats and all the people came up to try to stop them?
yeah, that's right. And the local
landowner was sitting on the wall
sat on a
with-
wall with a shotgun, and he
Yes.
said he'd shoot anybody that came up.
Yeah,
Mm.
and then it was like hundreds of them came.
Yeah, so
So it's I think
A poet like yourself. That's what I was going to
oh
bring
yeah,
up for.
one of my
But,
favourite poets.
Yeah, I think a part of the story of Taya Tefi that I personally, you know, find interesting is when it says, you know, that what was in the Ark of the Covenant. Let's say, now there's different, you know, the Ark of the Covenant is a symbolic thing as far as I'm concerned, so it could represent a lot of different things in terms of information, like it's symbolic. But I think possibly there was a physical thing as well, which we've discussed before about. We said, you know, the dimensions given in the Bible of the Ark of the Covenant fits directly inside the sarcophagus in the king's chamber.
Yeah.
So there possibly was a physical thing. But one of the things they say that was brought in the Ark of the Covenant with Taya Tefi was the tablets of the law.
Ah,
So
Oh.
that's what they, say.
the emerald tablets are.
The story is the tablets of Moses.
Yeah.
But we've already established in previous podcasts, Moses and Akhenaten, and the discovery of, or the rediscovery of, the emerald tablets. So when they say the tablets of law, it was the universal law.
Yeah.
And Kiri, maybe you can come in on this one about how Tara was the centre of the upholding of the law in Ireland. But it was a law of equality, for, I don't want to say Brehon law because that's way more in modern time. I'm talking about way more ancient than even like what we would call Brehon law. Like a universal law, which was a law of equality for all.
Yeah, Tara would have been the centre, and also Ishnok as well.
Ishnok, yeah.
Would have been the centre for. Well, the centre for power and the centre for the kings and for the law.
And even physically the center.
Even
Right.
physically the centre, yeah.
And when we say the law, we're talking about universal law. We're not talking about...
It'd be universal law,
Yeah.
but,
So universal law is law regarding the operation of energy as opposed to man-made law.
Yeah.
So Tara would have been a very important site in terms of the upholding of that law. And the thing I find interesting is in ancient Egypt, all the pharaohs had to take an oath to uphold the order of Mat.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
And the order of Mat in ancient Egypt was universal law, equality for all, universal law. So to me, that's a connection with, for example, Teia Tefi and Tara.
Yeah.
So would that be something similar that would have happened at Tara and Ishnok? Like with the Ardries or the High Kings?
Yes, the upholding of
They
the
would
universal
be
law.
dispersing the universal law,
Yeah.
meaning like everyone's right to a home, everyone's right to all the resources on the earth, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, and well, universal law, as we know, is about the operation of energy as opposed to
Yes.
the Ten Commandments being thou shalt not do this and thou
Yes,
shalt not
yeah.
do that. And the original universal law is what's written in symbol form inside all the mounds and sacred sites all around the world.
Yeah.
Collectively called the Book of Coming Forth by Light.
Yeah.
So Tara was a very important place,
Tara,
as we said, for that.
It was in Tara. The Mount of the Hostages in Tara is one of the oldest structures in Tara, and that's an alignment for the sun at Sound and Inbuck.
Mm-hmm.
That's the 4th of February and the 2nd of November. We thought about the 8th, but actually by checking up recently this year, it was the 2nd. The sun shines in and shows the shape of the doorway exactly on the back wall on the 4th of February, and we found this year on the 2nd of November, the exact date. And it's the only day that the sun, it shines exactly at sunrise on the back stone, showing the shape of the doorway exactly on the back one. It's very hard to get it because it's nearly always cloudy. But this year it was just a ray of sunshine just as it came up.
And did you get it?
I got a picture of it this year, and I have it. Yeah.
What colour did it appear on
It
the
appears
photo?
a
Red?
yellowish colour.
Oh, yellow,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so it's very important, and that's it's very much as important as Newgrange.
Oh,
because, and Loughrew, because Loughrew is the equinoxes. And
well, that's the thing about the sites in Ireland. They're not really kind of very well... The Irish people don't know...
They don't know.
A lot about their own sites, like, for example.
And that's true. On Tara now, and Cormac, people still don't know the alignments. I had a henge beside me, a Riverstown henge, and I've done measurements myself, and when there's a gap, it's a double ring of clay, and it originally was, and then there's a gap in between, and I got the centre of the gap and the centre of the henge, and I took alignments, and I found that it on the winter solstice, the 21st of December, the sun shines. It's aligned to the winter solstice, and nobody knew that.
It's amazing.
And
So,
I mentioned to Kevin Prenderton, and I said, "How come you haven't found out that?" He said, "There are so many henges that we haven't just checked them all out." You know?
The time really.
So,
But when you think of the people, or the, whatever you want to say, the people, the consciousness that was doing that type of thing, I mean, they were literally creating this interplay between the stars, the planets, the sun, the moon, and structures on the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, I'm not an architect, but I can imagine that that's an extremely difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But they were doing it, and they were, you know, they had highly advanced
And
knowledge.
I have a map on the back of my new book. I have a map.
What's the name of your book?
Yeah,
I
tell us.
call me a book. I just call it Kerry Murray, Bard of Tara poetry.
Okay, yeah, and that's all your books. of
That's all.
poems.
That's me. 6
And that's on your site that you talked about, right?
Yeah.
That we gave at the beginning.
So can you get that book on your site? As well? Can you
no,
order one on your site?
as it is, I just sell it myself on Tara Hill. You know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you
So
go
go
to
find
Tara
Kiri
Hill.
on Tara.
Go find
find
Kiri
me.
on Tara Hill.
If not, send him a message and get a big box of books and take them and give them away.
What was the
But-
picture on the back of your
The
book?
picture on the back. This is the moon calendar on at Nout, and what I've done here is each one of these, each moon here is a day, and each one of these is a month. There's this 5-year calendar, and Martin Brennan deciphered this years ago in the
Stars
Secret
and
of the
Stones,
Secret of the
yeah,
Stones,
yeah.
and he gave a lecture. He came back and gave a lecture at Newgrange one year, and I took notes, and I drew this map here,
We'll put a picture of.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put it up.
and I put the corresponding moons on the outside to the ones here. The full moon is the one here on the top.
Yeah.
So on the outside I put the corresponding moons. So that's a moon calendar, and if you mark the date of the full moon, you have a calendar. You know what the moon looks like every night in the sky.
Yeah.
And if you can get a picture of this,
Yeah,
Wow.
Sure.
We'll put it. We'll put a picture of what
Well,
Kiri is just talking
I'll
about
just
there.
make a connection for me. We were just talking about that pattern
The
in our
undulating
podcast that we
serpent.
just finished
Yeah.
of the undulating
And I have-
serpent, and it's on the tombs in Egypt. And I said,
Yeah.
no,
and I have
so
it
that's
marked
what I was thinking.
on the
about.
bottom. I have it
Exactly.
marked.
It's a
I
very
have the,
good.
Yes.
the months, the 21st. Is written on the bottom, and I put all the months on it. The
Yeah, I
21st
can see.
Yeah, the 21st.
So it's an
and all the 21st are the 21st of March, the 21st of June, the 21st of December, 21st of September. All the 21st are important dates
Of every month.
for alignments of on this
Oh,
one.
mine's November
And we're coming-
21st, so I like that as well.
That's her birthday.
Yeah.
And we're coming up to the 21st of December, of course.
And this year is
Exactly, of
supposed to be
course.
very, very special, right?
So we were chatting earlier, Kiri, and you mentioned that there was a ceremony done in the graveyard. Was it at the church there at Tara?
In the centre of the Rat
for
of the Synods.
souls, I think you were saying.
The Rat of the Synods was at the centre. They discovered well later. The Rat of the Synods was the centre of a very old oval-shaped stockade of there was 12-foot deep holes were dug, or channel was dug, and there was posts maybe 30 foot high. So this was one of the old structures in Tara.
Wow.
But a while back, a clairvoyant came with 2 assistants and wanted to do a ceremony, a full-on ceremony about releasing trapped souls from Tara. And a friend of mine, Chris from England, and myself, JP, asked us to step in because he had been in hospital at the time. And we stood in a circle, and it was a long ceremony. And when we walked up on the hill, this clairvoyant knew, he had never been in Tara, but he knew all about Tara. And he said Tara is defended by 2 warriors on horseback with leather armour.
Wow.
And he told us, and then he was talking about dragons, green dragons and red dragons and stuff. And
Oh, that makes sense with the ley lines as well.
and
Perfect.
and this is a really spot. This where we're doing the ceremony was one of them, a very strong ley line that goes right through the Rat of the Synods, right down to Ringlestown Rat, and it's aligned to the setting sun and the winter solstice. So we did this ceremony, and in the course of the ceremony, he said he was releasing trapped souls who didn't know where they were and had to find a way to the light. And as he came to that part, I could feel the muscles in my legs were getting to kind of a spasm. And later on I said to Chris, did anything happen when he said he was releasing the souls? He said the muscles in my back all went into a spasm. So I reckon the souls that went through us and to the light. And later on the clairvoyant said to us, do you have any dreams or any bad effects? And I said, actually, I felt really good that I've done something good. I felt, that
You helped.
they helped. So it was just one of these experiences at Tara.
And do you feel, I mean, I know we've spoke before, but do you feel that, I mean, if anybody knows Kiri, you know that you always see him at Tara. And as you say, your family has a very long history.
My mother's family have been at Tara for something like 800 years, who were Wilkinsons, and they're very much connected. Even in the church at the back of the altar, there's slabs to Elizabeth Wilkinson, and they were a very important family. And then my father's family, Murrays, were local family for quite a long time, and both families fought in the Battle of Tara in 1798, I've just got reference over 2 different books. My mother's family, one Wilkinson fought at Tara and he made it home when the battle failed, and 3 of my father's family fought, 2 were killed and 1 made it home, and he brought a bayonet with him as a souvenir, and it's still in the family.
Wow.
And for people who don't know what the Battle of Tara was, what it was about.
It was the same as all the battles. It was for independence from England and for fair treatment for the Irish people.
Okay.
But with the help of the French, if I remember correctly, right?
What time frame was this?
1798.
1798.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
So, it was very
Coincides
important.
with Napoleon.
Do you think, or rather, would you feel that you have more than one lifetime at Tara? Do you think?
I would believe I had more than one lifetime at Tara. I was born and lived maybe only half a mile from Tara, and I've always lived in Tara, and I'd always take the water from the White Cow well. Don't drink any water with fluoride in it. And we do a lot of meditations at Tara, and I studied and did some Druid study at Tara to learn about Druids, and I've done meditations. And at one particular time I went into a past life and it was very realistic. It was just like a dream, and I was in a hunting party with a very long spear, and we were coming up from the Gower River, and it was very realistic because we'd been hunting deer, and there was a deer across the pony. When the horses were only small ponies, and there was a smell of blood and sweat, and I could actually smell that in the dream.
Wow.
And then we got back up to Tara, and there was a battle on, and there was just places on fire.
Was this a dream you had?
This was a dream. It was a past life experience. It was a dream. It just came into my head.
But it came to you in a dream?
It came to me in a dream.
Were you awake or were you asleep when you had this dream?
I was awake when I had this dream. It came into my head on Tara.
Okay.
And it just.
I know what you mean. It's like a movie plays in your head.
It's like a movie plays in my head.
But you were actually awake when it happened.
I was awake when it happened, but it was very realistic because. And then when I got back up to Tara, and then there was a battle on, and people being killed and blood and everything. And then there was 3. I could visually see 3 oval-shaped huts, and they were covered in reeds, and I could actually I actually went up to Tara, and I found out where these 3.
You could see where they were.
You could see there's actually still marks on the ground where these were beside the banquet hall as you head up the banquet hall on the left hand side. And some of the stuff there was taken with they dug a quarry in Tara once, dug away stone, and they dug away some of the structures there. Yeah, right at the end of the banquet hall, my father told me that they quarried for gravel there and dug away the whole end of it. That's what that big hole at the end of the banquet hall is.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. It's like slumped into it.
Yeah, so I don't know what to make of past life dreams, but I do believe I had a past life in Tara.
So, like, I know you spend a lot of time at Tara, so if you don't, I mean, if this is too personal a question, you don't need to answer it, but what do you feel your role is there? Do you feel like you're kind of a guardian?
I don't call myself anything, but
no.
Some people call me a guardian of Tara and keeper of the hill.
What do you feel yourself?
I do feel because, yeah, I would feel I'm a guardian of the hill because I'm there all the time and I watch out for it. And
what do
one
you
particular time somebody had done some witchy spell with at Rathgrania, and I was giving somebody a tour, and the person said I can't go on to this because there's witchcraft involved here, and there was broken eggshells, broken eggs, and a lot of stuff, and she couldn't go near it. So I rang up a friend of mine then, and she said if you want to clear this spell, she told me what to do. You have to cover yourself in, but she gave me a prayer to say for protection, and you have to cover yourself in an imaginary blue shield. And then I had to get water out of the White Cow well and salt, sea salt, and I had to walk around the circle with this. And I actually got a can of water, and when I started on the outside, I walked around, and the water ended exactly where I started. The last drop of water ended, and I had a box of salt, and I walked around with the salt, and the last bit of salt ended when I stopped. So I just felt I had to do this.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I reckon because I felt I had to do it, because I live in Tara, I feed the crows in Tara every day, because it's just something I do, and I'm very much connected to Tara. And actually, the wall in the car park, myself and Jock and Larry built that for the council when we were
Oh, did
on the
you?
dole. Yeah, we actually,
Wow.
it was one of these jobs we got when we were on the dole, and we got spent a week on, week off for a year building this wall. And
On the parking lot
that's
there.
the wall
So-
in the car park, 'cause that's who built that.
It was
Hey,
interesting.
there you
Yeah.
go.
That's it, yeah. And it was interesting you mentioned there as well about the White Cow well.
The White Cow well, we all still call that the well of the White Cow. They call it Patrick's Well loads.
Yeah.
But it is originally it was a pagan White Cow well, and you can call things loads of names, but the first name is usually the right name for it. You
Well,
know?
yeah, it's interesting because the White Cow in Egypt was known as Hathor.
Yeah.
And Hathor is we were just talking about it earlier, but the White Cow was also to do with the Milky Way,
Oh, yeah.
you know, so the
Well-
stars. And in Egypt, all the temples that align along either side of the banks of the Nile, going all the way up from the south of Egypt to the north of Egypt where the pyramids are, each temple and site corresponds to a star or a constellation of stars in the sky. So in other words, the temples along either side represent the stars in the sky, and the River Nile itself represents what they call the Milky Way, or the dark rift in the Milky Way.
Oh, that's amazing.
And the milk of the Milky Way, if you like, is the milk of the White Cow, which in Egypt is known as Hathor.
Yeah.
But the same in Ireland, all the sites along the Boyne, and Bow is bovine, so it's to do with a cow as
And
well.
some say that the Boyne is Boyne, Boyne,
Yeah,
and
White cow then.
White Cow River.
it is the White Cow River, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's the same as in Egypt, because all along the Boyne, all the mounds along the Boyne represent stars in the sky, or star constellations,
Yeah.
as well as many other things.
Yeah.
So what you find is in Egypt and in Ireland, you have the same concept of comparing the river to the Milky Way and calling it the White Cow, and then placing all the stars that run along either side of the dark rift of the Milky Way were copied on the ground by the mounds and all the sacred sites.
Oh, yeah.
So they were literally bringing the sky to the
Yeah.
ground, or heaven on earth, if you
Heaven
like.
on earth. Exactly.
Yes.
Star walkers.
So
Walking
that
through
took
the sites.
very intelligent people to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
To be able to create a site, for example, like Newgrange, that can still operate successfully without ever having to be realigned.
Yeah.
So since its construction, it's never had to be realigned.
Yeah.
The light still successfully shines in
Yeah.
Exactly.
on the 21st. It's a couple of days either
Yeah.
side of the 21st, but it's still, and it was the creation of the window box
Yeah, the window
and
box. Yeah.
how the actual slope up to the inside of the chamber. So those two things in conjunction, and of course the orientation of the chamber.
Well,
But that's an amazing.
exactly.
Well,
Well, you have to know about the 25,920 year cycle of the Earth to be able to do that. in
Yeah,
the
the
first
procession
place.
of the equinox.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, if I'm not mistaken, like the temples in Egypt they were built on mounds, right? That were originally
That's
placed
right.
there.
Exactly.
So that is a direct connection between the
Yes.
mounds here
Very good, Charlotte. Yeah.
and the mounds that are.
Excellent. And
in
that's the
Egypt.
story that's told in Edfu Temple about the mound
That's it.
builders. Yeah.
Edfu, yeah.
Edfu, yeah.
So there you go.
Do you have another
And
poem there?
I have another
Kiri,
poem.
that you'd like?
Now
Thanks,
that-
Charlotte, for that. That was a good point.
Now that you mentioned Newgrange, I wrote this poem from Newgrange. After being in Newgrange and looking around, I wrote this poem. I just call it Newgrange. For one brief moment every year, the sun shines in and all is clear. Constructed of just mud and rock, is mankind's oldest working clock. Joint fingerprints are carved in stone, and chiseled to a large fish bone. Amazed we look at all these things, and a tree cross section with 20 rings. Some people understand them all, these somatic patterns on the wall. When ancient peoples sang within, sand made these shapes on a tight skin. Height inside is 13 rocks high, 13 full moons yearly in our sky. Control the weather and the seas, and the temperature is 10 degrees. A white quartz wall shines so bright, as morning sun banishes the night. A small window welcomes each ray of the rising sun each shortest day. There's jagged rocks that stand so high, pointing up at the clear blue sky, all built by man's blood, sweat and tears, so long ago, 5,000 years.
Wow.
Fabulous. Thank
That's
you,
amazing.
Kiri.
That's really good. And I noticed you mentioned in there the somatic patterns on the wall.
The somatic patterns on the wall is if you get a drum
Oh, I know, yeah.
And-
Cymatics. We were just
yeah,
talking about it actually
and
just a while ago.
We have done this in
Making
Tara,
sound visible, yeah.
and
What did you do?
we have put coffee on a drum, and then we chant it, and
Inside the
In-
mound.
we've actually done this at Tara, but our friend Donna, was very good into sound, and he knew all about the sound
Cymatics,
and
yeah.
cymatics, and we all chanted, and the coffee made different shapes.
Coffee grain.
So we had this drum, and the coffee, when we all chanted together at the same resonance, the coffee made a shape, and there was a diamond in the centre, and then 6 circles. And the shape that we made was the exact same as on the roof. If you go into Newgrange on the right hand passage, on the roof of that, we made the very same symbol as is on the wall. So what we reckon is that particular symbol is actually a chant that's preserved for 5,000 years on the wall.
Exactly.
Wow.
And
So
that's
the relationship between a chant and what's on the wall.
symbol on the wall.
the
And that's
symbol
a
on the
really
wall.
interesting
It's like
point
a
you're making.
frozen chant.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
a very
music.
interesting point you're making, Kerry, because in the last podcast we did, that's what we were talking about. We were talking about the cymatics and how it's the vibration. You know, so in other words, all the symbols you see inside the mounds, you know, the spirals and all those things, they're all visible sound. They're sound made visible.
Some of them are sound made visible.
They
but
all
some-
are.
But
They're all frequencies made visible. But some of them are not frequencies that you can make with your voice, if you know what I mean.
no, but there is one inside Newgrange as you go straight into Newgrange on the left hand side. There's one of a fishbone, and
Well, I
people
know
say
the one you're talking
yeah.
about, yeah.
Now
People often say a feather as well, though.
people say that it could be a branch,
An olive,
or it could be
a feather.
it could be a vine, or it could be anything. But there's
Palm leaf.
or palm leaf, but I counted the vertebrae in there's 19 vertebrae in this on this, and I counted the bones in a salmon, and the bones in the salmon were the same amount of bones. So
So you think it's a fish?
I reckon because it's beside the boyne, and because salmon
and knowledge.
and salmon knowledge and salmon and the boyne, I think it could be a fish bone
Representing the salmon
on
and
the wall.
knowledge.
And also as you go into Newgrange, on the left hand passage there are concentric circles, not exactly circles, but if you look at a cross section of a tree,
Oh, the tree
Oh,
leaves.
yeah. I
very
agree.
much like
Oh,
the
yes.
grains in a
Dendrochronology.
tree,
Yeah,
and
dendrochronology.
there was 90. I counted the rings. I think there was 19 rings in one, and there was supposed to be. There was some reference to someone that was buried there, someone that was 19-year-old, and I reckon that the cross section of the tree could be referring to
To
somebody's
the, yeah.
age.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly.
And then if
That's
you look
interesting.
outside on the main stone outside, if you look at your hand and look at your fingerprints. Your fingerprints on your hand, there's 3 different types of fingerprints.
That's right,
There's
those
single
spirals
loop,
look very
double
like,
loop,
yeah, yeah.
and then concentric. And a lot of these spirals look
Look
very
like
much.
fingerprint. You're right there.
Somebody's fingerprint is actually preserved on a stone, and
Wow.
it's
Graham
too.
Hancock was right. Fingerprints of the gods.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
what the book is.
So that's too much of a coincidence not to be true,
Of
you know.
course, yeah.
And then
But can I just go back there what you were saying about the salmon and knowledge, because that's very interesting. Just again, I'm making the connection with Egypt because in Egypt there's the whole story of Osiris, and I'm not going to get into it because I've talked about it before. But there's part of it where it says Osiris was chopped up into 14 different pieces. This is in the ancient mythology of Egypt. And it says Osiris was chopped up into 14 pieces. And all the pieces of his body were buried up and down along the Nile. And where each piece of his body was buried, there was a temple placed on top. And where his head was in a place called Abydos. But anyway, the 14th piece of his body was the phallus or the penis. And that was thrown into the River Nile. But it says in the Egyptian mythology that it was eaten by a fish. Now, I always felt the resonance between the fish in that story and the salmon and knowledge.
Yeah.
It's told differently,
yeah.
but it's the same story. And that's the thing I noticed when I was in Egypt. It's funny, when I was in Ireland, I was always focused on Egypt and Egyptian mythology and all that kind of stuff. And then when I went to Egypt, I found myself spending years actually looking at the Irish mythology from Egypt,
Yeah.
which was an interesting thing. But I saw how the mythology actually is telling the same story, but we just the Irish tell it in a
Different way.
it's kind of just told in a different way, but it's the same story. I just thought I'd make that point about the fish inside because
Yeah.
I think that's interesting because the store, you know, I've seen that what you might call feather or leaf or fish, and the point you've made there about the seminal knowledge, I think is actually a really good one, you know.
Yeah, it been beside the boyne and that.
Yeah.
And also inside the there's the inside where the corbelled area inside. If you count
The roof,
the
are you
roof,
talking-
cobbled
yeah.
roof, right up to the cobbled roof, if you count the stones, there's 13. There seems to be 13 layers of stones, and there's 13 moons in a year.
Yeah,
So
excellent.
I think that could be.
So that was like the dome of the sky.
yeah.
The domed roof inside Newgrange would have been like the dome of the sky.
So everything was related to something, you know, and
Yeah.
also the triple spiral. If you look at it, I've been drawing the triple spiral to get it perfect for the front of my book, and what I found out was if you join the center of the three triple spirals and make a triangle,
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
you have a right angle triangle.
Yeah.
It's the same as Pythagoras' theory of the square and the hypotenuse.
And you know the interesting,
Yes.
thing you're saying about the right angle triangle is the Great Pyramid has not got 4 sides; it has 8 sides,
That's right.
and it's each one of the 8 sides is a right angle triangle. So it's effectively is that.
Yeah.
If you draw that, you'll draw a pyramid. You'll draw the shape of the pyramid. So
So-
so if you put 2 of those right angle triangles back to back, you make one of the faces of the pyramid.
Well, yes.
So this was preserved, and people are always trying to figure out what the triple spiral is about, and that's one particular thing.
And how about this idea that the triple spiral is also to do with gestation? Like each spiral represents 3 months, so the 3 spirals would represent the 9 months of gestation. You know, when a woman is pregnant, let's say.
It could well be, but
You know the way they say Newgrange represents a womb.
But the 3 of them are not. There's 2 of them the same, and then the other one is completely independent. If you look at the triple spiral here like that, this is 2 circles enclosed in an 8 figure.
Yeah,
Like the mother
And
and,
then-
child.
Yeah.
but they're
Well,
connected.
that's,
But then they're connected. Then,
I mean, you have to do that in one go.
Yeah.
It's connected. They're
Yeah.
all connected.
but
I do see what you're saying.
You see,
but they are all
it is
connected.
the third
yeah.
one is different.
Well, it reminds me of something we were talking about in our previous podcast. That you know the symbol of the Trinity is found like frequently
Everywhere, yeah.
everywhere, and we were talking about how in I guess the Egyptian mysteries is like the male and female energy, or like just in general, combines to make the divine
Child.
neutral
It could be, yeah,
state.
that's right. The
Which-
two, that
yeah.
would make more sense
Very good,
because
Charlotte.
the
Yeah.
the 2 together are very much similar, and the
Yes.
third one is different. So it could be the 2 of
The
these.
male and the female.
The 2 of
the
these
baby.
could be combined.
The male
make
and the female.
The 2 of them the 2 of them combined together. This is a separate one here. If you look at it,
Yes, and
it's just leaves the lead out. As the 2 of them are just on its own, a figure 8, enclosed in a figure 8, and then if you look where it comes out here, then it's opened up here and joined.
So we're talking
together.
about
That
the
could make
triple
sense, yeah.
spiral
Yeah.
and
And-
the
and
two.
that would link to me as well. Like that can be linked to multiple things. Like we were talking about
Geometry, sine
you know,
waves.
Well, it is linked to the geometry because you can get the triple spiral by doing the flower of life.
I was actually just going to say as well. It reminds me of geometry when we were discussing how if you connect the centers with a straight line, you get a pyramid, and that's
Yeah.
essentially what you're doing with the sacred
And also-
geometry.
Yeah.
Is connecting the
That
circle
is
with the
female
lines.
Yeah.
energy, and the angles
Exactly.
are male energy.
Did you have a realization?
I'm having a realization here.
Her
guys.
realization.
She's seen with her real eyes.
She is.
So yeah, Kerry, we were talking about we discussed, I suppose, before we started the podcast about doing another kind of interview with you, but doing it on Tara Hill.
Yeah, that would be great because
Yeah,
there's just really
You can point out things.
a
in the
picture is
photograph.
1,000 words, you know.
exactly.
And I could point out various nodes of energy and alignments, and some I've found out myself, and some that people told me about. And it's
Do you feel that? Sorry to interrupt you, Kerry, but do you feel that you're just mentioning nodes of energy and stuff? Do you feel that Tara was used in a way as a healing center as well?
I think I was told that a man had cancer that he could do nothing about, and he stood on a node of energy every day for a length of time, and his cancer disappeared. I well believe that energy can heal, and I well believe that when two ley lines meet, they cause a spiral of
That's
energy.
right, yeah.
vortex.
And I also believe that the healing power people have from energy as well. That energy can. I've seen a particular video from Japan where people actually heal somebody with a small tumor, and I'd well believe that the energy of Tara and the energy, people's energy, can have a really healing effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know the way they say, like, you know, the way you'd hear people call them, no, you and me know this is not the correct way to kind of refer to them, but they call them like fairy circles and fairy mounds. So we're talking about like the Tuatha Dan and that. What do you think when, you know, the idea that when somebody steps into one of those fairy circles or fairy mounds, that they enter into like Tirnanog or you know, the land of eternal youth or the land of the fairies or the Tuatha? What do you
I think
of
so.
that?
I think the energy might have an effect on them, you know, and it might bring them. They might just hallucinate or have an experience, you know.
You mentioned you mentioned about the sound and the cymatics. There is you know, if you were inside one of those mounds and, for example, the sound that you might hear inside is like the sound. Did you ever blow across the top of a bottle?
Yes.
And do you know that sound it makes inside? Well, if you just sat inside on a kind of a day where there was wind blowing outside, that's the sound you'd hear inside one of those mounds.
Oh yeah, of course.
So they're actually harmonic resonators inside the mounds.
And
One of the ways, like, there's a lot of ways to alter consciousness. Like sensory deprivation is a way to alter consciousness, using certain, like mushrooms, for example, or you know, all those plants were considered like sacred plants, like
sacred
marijuana.
plants, yeah.
I'm not talking about like drugs that people would use today, like ecstasy and stuff. I'm talking about sacred plants.
The natural organic
Exactly,
stuff.
like ayahuasca and
Oh,
peyote
yeah,
and
ayahuasca and all that.
all those kind of things. But they were used to alter consciousness, and as you said, hallucinations, you know, when you say hallucinations, what is that? It's going into an alternate dimension, and that's what shamans would do. That's the shamanic journey, and they use those substances. But what I'm saying is there's also a way to alter that consciousness in that way without using any substance, and that's through sound. So if you're sitting in a place where you can create a sound, that's the place that you're in is constructed to resonate whatever sound that you're making. It can actually bring you into that same experience as if you had taken, for example, ayahuasca or something like that, but you've done it with sound. You haven't used any substance.
Yeah, because it would change the frequency.
Absolutely, and that's another way of shamanic journeying, you know.
Yeah.
And I know, for example, you were mentioning there earlier as well about the light shining into the mound and hitting a certain symbol. I know in Egypt, when the light in all the temples in Egypt, they have light wells in the ceiling.
They're
where
amazing.
the light, remember in Abydos temple,
Yeah.
where the light just streams through.
Light well activations are amazing.
Yeah. But the beams of light hit the symbols or the hieroglyphs on the wall at certain times of the day
Well,
and
that's
things like that.
very much reminiscent of like what happens at Newgrange and many
Exactly,
other-
that's what I'm making the
And
comparison.
Particularly
Absolutely.
Carnty and Lacroix.
Yes, exactly.
But you know,
There's
the
multiple.
interesting thing, sorry if I just
Continue.
want to finish that point, the interesting thing is that in Egypt, and I say it's exactly the same here, and I just want to ask you, Kiri, if you've come across the same concept. In Egypt, when the sun shines in, for example, and a beam of light will shine on a particular symbol, well, an initiate would know that if they go up and they put their hand up to that symbol, that will do something. It will either open some kind of secret opening,
Yeah.
or it will release and have some kind of activation of information for the initiate. So I know that the symbols inside the mounds here work the same way. And when the light goes in and hits a certain symbol, if the initiate is inside and they put their hand up to that symbol, or whatever they're guided to put up, it doesn't have to be their hand, it could be their head or their forehead, their third eye. If they, you know, touch that symbol, it's an opening to something. It could be a physical opening. In other words, a secret stone pops up.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it could be a download and an activation.
Well,
in actual fact, it would be both at the same time.
I would believe that when I've noted in Newgrange once when the sun shone in through the opening in the top
The roof box.
and the roof box, that we were standing outside and the energy, we could feel the energy coming out the door.
Yes,
When it hit,
yes,
so
yes.
activated. So when it activated inside, the energy of the flow of energy came out
Like a backflow kind
like a
of.
backflow,
yeah.
and also in the mound of the hostages. Very hard to get a photograph of the alignment because it's very hard to get a morning. There's no clouds.
Yeah.
But one particular morning, I got a really good picture. They were walking on the mound. I think it was 2012. They were doing walk around the mound, and they had covered over polythene, and they had also Harris fencing around it. And I just woke up a chance that morning and looked out, and it was the right date, but there was no clouds in the sky, and I made it up in time. I brought a spanner with me and opened up the Harris fencing, and then I took off the polythene, and I just had it all taken off when the sun shone in. But what I noticed was, when the sun shone in, the way you can feel, like I look for ley lines in tar, I can feel the energy with my hands because it's so long at it. But I could feel the energy when the sun shone on the back stone. The energy came out the door. It was very strong energy came out the door. So when the sun activated the stone at the back, whatever it did, it released energy.
Yes,
It came back out
Yeah.
again. So
Yeah.
that would, I presume,
And
that
so
can be used
would you
in other
say,
things.
if you say, had you been inside and you could have put your hand up against it, can you see where you would have...
The energy
I
would
said-
have
yeah.
gone right into your,
I said the energy would have gone right into
into your
and-
auric field.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
you
you
would
know,
have-
an interesting...
it could affect your brainwaves. It could affect you
Absolutely.
what you think of, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just bringing another interesting memory to mind as well. When you stand inside the chambers in the temples in Egypt, and you sound, you chant. When you stand in front of certain symbols, exactly what you're saying happens. You get this reverberation or backflow, as you said, of the sound. So your own sound is coming back to you, but it comes back to you almost like on a higher
Like
octave.
a higher octave, yeah.
And so you make the sound, but it's coming back, and then you end up in this wave of sound, of your sound going out, and the higher octave coming back, and it's bouncing back off the stone and the symbol of the wall that you're doing it in front of, or the chamber that you're in. So
Well, that would be like the chants you were describing that are encoded in like the symbols on the walls and Newgrange and stuff.
yeah, they're like the symbols inside are like notes for the initiate to
Yeah,
go in
exactly.
and look and say, oh, that's the resonance, that's the frequency I have to hit. You know,
Yeah, we were talking about
it's sound and light activated. You know,
yeah, but that reminds me of Saqqara.
that's why I'm bringing it in,
Yeah.
because
Because they had a
I
hospital
wanted-
there. I've been there with Antoinette. Antoinette's been there a million times, but they have the cubicles. They were the
This is in
Hathors,
Saqqara in
sound
Egypt.
and light healers. The crystalline beds they laid on are still there.
Yeah,
The boxes for resonating are still there.
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
Saqqara in Egypt is a place that was used for sound healing. And we were talking about the white cow, remember the white
Yeah.
cow well? Well, the white cow in Egypt was Hathor. And Hathor, well, it was the Hathors actually. They were a group of beings that were known in ancient Egypt for their ability to heal through sound, but also through light as well.
Yeah, color.
And
Yeah.
the sound they made was most closely associated to the sound of dolphins.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And they do sonoluminescence, right? So the note creates a
Sonoluminescence.
bubble of light.
That's exactly it. Sonoluminescence, sound creating light.
Oh, I've heard of this. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think if we get Kiri, would you like to read
Another poem for the
another
end, and then
like
we'll
say
carry
end
on.
out the podcast? We'll finish this podcast. We are
yeah.
going to do, as we said, we're going to follow
see
this
what
up with
Make a short
another
film.
interview with Kiri on Tara
Yeah.
shortly. But if we wind this up now, is everyone?
Yeah.
Have you any more? You'd
I
like
have.
to add?
Is there
I've
anything you
actually.
want to see?
I have a poem about from relating to Tara. I got a book, McAllister's Book of Tara. It's a very old book, and it has a lot of information that's not readily not known now. And I've what I do with a book, I read a book, and then I put the whole book into a poem.
And you had the book of Taya Taffy as well.
I have the book of Tia Teffy here as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reference to poets and stuff in it, and it's an amazing.
Do you
book.
want to? Is there anything in particular you want to read us out there?
I could
in
read
the
a piece
book of
out
Taffy?
Tia Teffy, and
Would you mind reading that piece there that references that last paragraph there, because I think that part there references to Egypt in a part, doesn't it?
Okay. These things he spake to Julius, and bade him hide in his heart. The blessing and cursing mingled, and gave him grace to depart. Ere we sailed betwixt mighty islands, both kept of a savage folk. Now the southward sailed sons unto Egypt, but the northerners broke no yoke. Here the prophet foretold how in latter days an eagle should fly from his eyrie among the mountains which lifted heads to the sky, swift as the swarming of Gower, but lacking strength to endure. Unstable, his beak he dipped in the prey with a hold unsure.
Very good. And that's from the book of Taya
That's from the
Taffy.
book of Tia Teffy, and which someone gave me a present of.
And Taya
This is
Teffy is,
beautiful.
of course, Tamar
Yeah.
Teffy to do with Tara,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
And
she was
Tara
from
is
Egypt
named after.
and came to Ireland.
So
And the book is by J.A. Goodchild, transcribed, edited, and animated by Daniel J. Nolan. So I don't know if you can get that book readily, but I'm sure you can.
I'm sure we can. So do you want to finish? Is there anything else you want to add?
Yeah,
Like
is there
about
anything
Tara?
you'd like to
Is there
add about
anything
Tara,
that we?
like, or your relationship or your love of Tara?
I don't know. Tara, the synchronicity of Tara is amazing. I've had some crises in my life where I actually, one particular time I had to go and get Xanax tablets from my doctor. I was so stressed over. I won't go into it. But I went up to Tara and I was very stressed. And as I came up, I met a girl called Geraldine, an amazing woman. And she said, what's up with you? I said, I'm really stressed out. I have Xanax tablets, but I don't want to take them because I'm not into medicines.
And what do they do?
Xanax calm you down if you're stressed. And I had
you were stressed, yeah.
I was really, really stressed. I won't go into it, but
Yeah.
So she said, she brought me down to Courtney Davis's shop, and she said, you have to pay for this and buy a leather-bound book. Leather-bound book cost me, I think it was €80, but it was lovely. The part and stuff, it was really a beautiful book. And she said, you get get everything that's worrying you, your solicitor letters, all the problems you have, and write down all your problems as well, and you put them inside this book. And this is to do with King Cormac, this original idea. And you fold your book over and you tie a ribbon on your book and you put this on your sacred altar. And all of your problems are being digested, so to speak, in this leather book. And psychologically, you take them all out of your head. So you don't
put them in the book.
And you put them in the book. And then you're free of all your problems. And you can go about freely because you
don't have to carry them with you.
You don't carry an overload of problems. And then every day you go in and open the book and try and look through your problems, see what you can do to solve them, and close them again, and back on your altar. And this was absolutely amazing. And as I arrived up the Tara, she was just driving off, and it was a pure chance I came at the exact right second
to meet her.
So to meet her, and at a similar time, something else happened to me, and I went up, and there was a woman called Anna, she's an amazing woman, and she had a dog, and I used to actually pet the dog, feed the dog or pet the dog, and I was with the far end of Tara, just walking around trying to get stuff out of my head, and the dog, seeing me, and the dog came running down to me, and then she followed the dog down, and she walked around with me, and I told her the problem I had, and she said nothing for about a half an hour, and she said, Kiri, she said, you are handling your problems very well. You have a good handle on them. And she gave me confidence and stuff, and I got over the problems. But I have Tara as a refuge for me from my problems.
Yeah.
It's a different world. You can leave your problems out to the gate and walk around Tara and come back out again. And I also haven't had problems. I can help people with their problems too.
Yeah.
And some people say I do healing, but anyone that helps anyone else is a healer, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tara is just a fascinating place to me, and I every day I go to Tara every single day if I can, spend time up there, because it's just an amazing. It's a different dimension in some ways.
It is.
It is.
Mythical province of Mead or Maida.
Yeah, and it's got such great energy too.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's now that you're saying a different dimension. What's your thinking on the whole idea of Ireland being Atlantis? Because I've talked about this before as well.
Well, they reckon
there
was an island off
the concentric circles
off Ireland called, I think they called it High Brazil. Brazil is named after it. And they reckon that people came from there. I would well believe at one stage it was Atlantis, and then just the highly intelligent people
dispersed
and then dispersed on to other places like Egypt and places. But I well believe it was.
And so, would you think that people, say like yourself, that, as you said, are every day almost at Tara or every day at Tara, would you say that you have a connection back to that time? Have you ever had that feeling that you would have had a connection back that far, or maybe even further?
I don't know. A healer once told me that I was a very old soul, and that I had a lot of past lives. And normally I wouldn't believe this, except for, like I said, the story I told you about past life in Tara. Mm-hmm. And I believe we have connections going back. I think we do have a lot of lives. I think we do. We come back again and again, and maybe we have to learn something.
Say if you were coming back again and again and again to Tara, what would you say your reason for it is?
I don't know. Maybe to learn something, you know.
Well, no, don't say you don't know.
I don't.
Just don't remember.
You said
I
first
would-
of all,
I
you
don't
said I
remember.
don't know, and then you said
then
maybe to learn something.
Yeah, well, I'm
So-
just saying maybe because I don't know, but I would think you have to learn
So
something.
if it was to learn something,
I
what do you
think-
think it was?
I think every day we learn something new or something important.
But if you
And-
were coming back life after life to stay at Tara to learn something, what do you think?
I
it
would
was?
think the most important thing to learn is to be happy and content no matter where you are, and forget about and don't bring money and stuff into it or
Yes.
property, because you come into this life with nothing and you leave with nothing, and what you have in between doesn't really matter in the end, you know. And if you're able to be happy
Well said.
and have
Kieran.
nice, and your wealth is not your money, your wealth is your friends.
Yeah.
If you have a few good friends, you're a very rich person.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah, I know somebody who used to say that all the time. If you just even have one close friend in the world,
Yeah, you're
you're
rich.
luckier than most people,
Yeah.
and you're rich. Yeah. That's lovely, Kerry. So would you like to read your poem?
I'll
now?
finish. I bought this book, McAllister's book of Tara, and I wrote this poem. I'll finish with this poem,
Thanks.
and I
Kerry.
called it Pagan Tara.
Thank you very much, Kiri.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Kerry.
Tara is a sacred place where kings and druids did dwell, and I've got some stories that to you I now do tell. They buried 3 old druids alive, Moel, Blukna and Block, and over their dead bodies they placed a standing rock. Keton was the king's butler, who one day got in a fight with a guest by the name of Ku, who killed him dead that night. Then Keton's friend killed Ku, and as on the ground he did lie, there came the first expression to take an eye for an eye. Doll and Durker were blind beggars, who fought to death one day, and a dwarf was trampled to death when he got in the way. Mata was a monster, who brave warriors killed dead, and Marasu was a farmeress, who made the king his bread. A queen is in the mound of Tia, and the she-hirelings they could fight, and the hostage mound is a clock for the spring and autumn light. The mouse brown was a savage wolf, all his victims he tore apart, until a clever warrior one day cut out his heart. Ratgronia is a healing place for ceremonies and shamanic sounds, and the past, present and future are marked by 3 chakra mounds. The Nemnock, Calf and Finn's well are still taught sacred now, and we still drink the water from the well of the White Cow. The Leo Fall was once stolen and became the Stone of Scone, and now the Queen of England has it underneath her throne. A fire's lit near the temple at sound when it gets dark. Where British Israelites dug holes, they're looking for the Ark. Yes, Tara is a sacred place, about which songs are sung. It's connected to Tir na Nog, where they are forever young. Tara is still a sacred place of love and hate and fear, and I'll finish now by saying that you're all welcome here.
Oh, Kerry.
Oh,
Thank
that was
you,
amazing.
Well, that was
Cute.
really gorgeous, and thanks a million. And
Talk
it's been
about a
pleasure
heart
to interview you.
activation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
And it's been a pleasure to talk to you today. And as we said, we're going to talk more to Kerry. We're going
Exactly.
to
On
do
Side of Tara.
yeah, because I'm sure everybody listening will want to hear more as well. And I know I certainly do as well.
Oh, same here.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so it's been an absolute pleasure, Clary. So
Yeah.
I'm going to say goodbye. I think everybody, Charlotte, would you like to say goodbye?
Goodbye, and thank you for listening, and thank you for Kiri for
Yeah.
being
You're
here.
welcome.
Thank you for coming to grace our podcast.
Yeah,
It was amazing.
Thank you for having me.
It's a mutual admiration society.
definitely. And thanks, Kerry. It's been a pleasure. Thanks a million. So
Slán,
take care.
slán. Oh, yes.
Slán,
Slán.
slán. Thank you. I wish I were on yonder hill, 'tis there I'd sit and cry my fill, till every tear would turn a mill. Iscoje to my forning's lawn. Shul, shul, shul arun. Shul go sucker agus shul go cune. Shul go daris agus eiliglum. Iscoje to my forning's lawn. I'll sell my rock, I'll sell my reel, I'll sell my only spinning wheel, to buy my love a sword of steel. Is
Isco J to my warning slot. Shul, shul, shul arun. Shul go sucker agus shul go cune. Shul go daris agus eilig lum. Isco J to my warning slot. Isco J to